I'm Sam Sharp, a Senior Associate at Browne Jacobson, and in association with the Food and Drink Federation, I'm going to be talking to Sarah Taylor, People and Culture Director at Staffline Recruitment, who are the largest provider of labour to the food manufacturing and production sectors. Sarah's remit covers all aspects of the people agenda, and we thought it'd be really interesting to hear from her on some of the recent trends and insights that Staffline are seeing in the food and drink industry, as well as in what candidates are looking for. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you
for joining us today.
Lovely to be here.
I'd like to kick off with kind of a bit of a general question.
Yeah.
Ask you to talk a little bit about the conversations that you're having in the sector and the trends that you're seeing, and really whether you think that there's sufficient focus on the D&I agenda in the industry as a whole.
Yeah, there has been a significant change in the conversations that we're having with our clients across both the drinks and the food sector. Over the last probably 5 years, the conversation around diversity, inclusion, and also ESG is becoming a real theme, both in what our clients are expecting of us as an employer, but also in any of the tenders that we are creating. There is now pretty much 8 times out of 10 where we have to do some kind of response around either diversity and inclusion, social recruitment, or ESG, so that we've seen a real change. And I would say probably in the last 12 to 18 months in the drinks and food industry, they are asking us to become more involved, more aware and more targeted in our candidate attraction.
Right. So people are asking for a much more diverse kind of pool of candidates that you're putting forward.
Definitely. What I would say that in the drinks industry specifically, the focus is more on gender. So there is a real desire to bring more women into the drinks industry. And if you think about the type of work that we recruit for, which is temporary flexible labour, and you think about a keg, and it actually is quite manual work, it is typically more attractive to men. But actually, to really target our recruitment campaigns at women and attract more diversity from a gender perspective, for example, more flexible working is so important. How do we generate and increase awareness around what the drinks industry can offer? And we're certainly seeing in the drinks industry, 2 of our clients have either appointed a female CEO or MD, or their successor is a female CEO or MD.
In how you respond to those tenders, have you kind of changed how you do that, even when it's perhaps not a specific requirement?
Definitely, and I would say, and again you can see these in our annual reports, in the last year and a half have got an ESG steering group of which I'm part of, and we are really looking at what we can do as a business to not only internally think about what we're doing, but also what's the story, how do we respond to clients. So again, and I won't name names, but a big grocer, supermarket, we had a probably 3 or 4 page response around ESG as part of the tender document. So we are consciously thinking about what we need to do and what our responsibilities are. Not only do we have the recruitment arm, but we also have skills training. So actually we have a huge opportunity from a social perspective around adding social value. We work with people who are unemployed, we are in prisons, and we develop their skills and training to enable them to be fit and ready for work. And then with them in the recruitment arm, we can then support those individuals into work. So we are really well placed to be able to respond effectively, not only to diversity and inclusion, but also the social element of ESG as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any other kind of standout clients or stories that you can share?
I think what I would say is the food industry is quite different, and certainly in food manufacture, food processing is typically less attractive work, certainly at the more junior levels. You are on a production line, for example. So I would say the food industry, more so than the drinks, have been more open to diversity and inclusion than ever before. And what we can see even from our own worker experience, what we see in terms of their feedback, it's the type of work in food that is more important than, say, the pay, which is more important in the drinks industry. But they are actively wanting to attract people, not just in gender, but also nationality. So what we find within the food industry is they are really passionate about ensuring that their recruitment is targeted and is reflective of the communities in which they serve. And actually the food industry is probably more attractive to women. So you will have a lot of food technicians that are typically female. So they have always been typically more open. And actually they're going slightly ahead of the gender part of diversity and inclusion. And actually it's about nationality. It is about sexuality. It's about really reflecting the communities in which they serve. What we can see is there's that difference from food and drink, and we, you know, again, part of our conversations has moved away from we have got this number of people that we need on this day, fill it, to can it be diverse? How do you demonstrate that you are driving differentiation? How do you ensure that we are trying to attract different new people into the food industry that we haven't been able to attract before? Yeah,
no, that's really interesting, because you kind of talk about the comparison between the food and the drink side of things. How does the food and drink industry compare to other sectors that Staffline are involved with?
What we're seeing from bigger corporates, so brands that you might typically know, they are and have been ahead on the ESG and D&I agenda for a while. What we are seeing in other sectors, we're seeing targets around social recruitment. So call centres, for example, will typically say they want 5% of their call centres to be of people who are probably less better off, so social value and driving that. We're also working with a new sector at the moment from a security point of view, and they are trying to proactively encourage more women into their industry. Across all industries, there is an element of focus on diversity and inclusion, ESG, but I think that actually the food industry has probably been leading the way for much longer, due to the fact that they have to be able to try and attract people, and actually if the type of work is less attractive, how do they create a better, more compelling offer outside of the job? I think the drinks industry has always attracted people into it, and actually in the last 12 to 18 months asking more of the questions around gender, but they are already an attractive employer and proposition. And what we see through our worker surveys is they're the two biggest factors, is what's the pay and what's the kind of work, and they're the things that are driving our either detractors or levels of engagement.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's obviously been the labour shortages in the food and drink sector over the last couple of years. How do you think that's impacted advancing the D&I agenda?
It is pushing clients and employers to really not take things for granted. So back in 2008, in the early years, there was an abundance of labour. Then you take the fact that we were able to attract people from across all of Europe. Again, that enabled people to almost have a constant bucket and flow of candidates coming into the market. I think since the change in immigration rules, since COVID, and you know, whether you call it the big resignation or the fact that people are starting to really evaluate what they want from work, I think we've all been pushed at speed to really think about how do we become an attractive employer, and to who. Employers across all of sectors, but specifically probably in food where they tend to pay less, they are working with us to look at how they can become more of a flexible, more attractive employer to a broader, differentiated group of candidates. And I think that's the biggest change. It isn't just about gender, it's about age. You know, we've got 4 generations at least of people in work now, and I think the focus on age is important. We see through our data that people who are typically older are more bothered about the type of work. People who are younger just want money. You know, because if it's temporary work, it's about money. What are you going to pay me? Women tend to be more bothered about the type of work, whether they belong and whether they have a sense of being treated fairly. whereas men are less bothered about that. We put 35,000 people into work every day. We have got access to a lot of data and insight around what people want from work. So we can use that to work with clients on how they can become more attractive.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of from a kind of candidate perspective, one of the trends we're seeing in the legal profession is much more of a focus from candidates asking us about our D&I initiatives. So I'm involved in the assessment centres for trainee solicitors coming through over the last couple of years, and this year there's been a really noticeable change in being asked, you know, at the end of the interview, kind of ask, have you got any questions for us? And I've not been asked questions like that before, but this year, almost every interview that I had asked those types of questions. So is that the same that you're seeing in the food and drink industry?
I would say for our permanent employees we are. I would say for temporary flexible workers, not really.
Yeah, less of a
the biggest thing that, you know, those candidates want is probably certainty in terms of hours, pay. Probably in our other part of the business where we do permanent recruitment, then yes, you know, people are considering the employer and what they have to offer. So I think when you're looking for permanent roles, definitely. Temporary flexible work, less so.
No, that makes sense, I guess. It would be really great as well to hear some of the things that you at Staffline are doing to kind of promote D&I and that agenda with your own workforce.
So our purpose is about enabling people into good work, and that's both for our workers, our clients and our own employees. And 2.5 years ago, we really started focusing on raising awareness across all of the facets of diversity and inclusion. So, you know, yes, of course, we focused around mental health, we focused around women in work, we focused around our BAME communities. And last year we started to distill that further. So, for example, we had a whole week dedicated to the menopause. Because again, you know, when 50% of your workforce are women, then actually it's really important to acknowledge. So we had a new menopause policy, we had external speakers. And this year, so we typically run 4 campaigns a year across all of the facets of diversity and inclusion. This year we've focused on cost of living, we've focused on parenthood, and next week we're actually doing an age and generation campaign where we always start with an internal kind of panel first. So we've got a representative from each of the 4 generations talking about the difference in work and how work has changed since their time of being in work. You know, we've got a fresh Gen Z person that's just doing a year in industry to somebody who's in her 60s and has been in work for, you know, a long time. And actually, what is it that they want from work and how has that changed? We want to raise awareness across all of the facets. We will then amend and adjust policy accordingly. So again, we've had transgender guidance when we talked about gender and sexuality. We talk more about flexible working. So we are, I guess, trying to become more than a box ticker.
Yes.
It's about what you do and how you live and breathe that. So we've actually just done a blog from our MD where the 3 areas of focus was a brand new half-yearly update on what we're doing around ESG across the whole of the group. We've also supporting a charity called the McCartney Foundation, which was actually somebody who used to work with us for 17 years and he died, unfortunately, of cancer. His wife set up a foundation, we're supporting that. And then we're sharing and showcasing our BAME steering group where a number of employees have set up a steering group because they want to raise awareness. So we've had a whole blog dedicated. So it isn't this is the month, let's focus. It's what are we doing throughout the year to create a sense of belonging and inclusion. And one of our values is be authentic. So it's about how do we continue to embody that throughout the year rather than a tick box of we're doing this campaign because the national calendar tells us so.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then how do you find the engagement with those campaigns? Do people kind of really happy and eager to get involved and suggest what you might want to do for future campaigns?
So last year we surveyed all of our employees and we asked them what they wanted, and the campaigns that we've run this year are based on their feedback. My ambition is to ensure that there is something in our campaigns and awareness for everyone at a point in time. What we find is we do get engagement. It's probably a quarter of our employee base each time. It's about relevance to that individual and making sure there's enough that we offer, that someone will find
throughout
something
the year.
throughout the year that's relevant. You know, our cost of living campaign, we had Jack Monroe come and speak, and I'd say that when she came to speak, we had 300 people on that call. When we've done neurodiversity campaigns and we've had people talk about autism, again, really, really, you know, high levels of interest, because what we've found, it's about giving people the space to be able to talk and be open and not be judged. And our role as a senior leadership team is to create the right environment and a safe space for people to be able to come and listen, ask questions and talk on the things that are impacting them. So hence why we try and really be broad in terms of the subjects that we cover.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Final question, kind of taking us back to the food and drink industry specifically. If you could change one thing in that industry to kind of promote or advance the D&I agenda a bit more, what would that one change be? I
think the biggest change would be to think more broadly, other than it being about gender. And I would really love the industry to really be thinking about how they become more attractive to as many people as possible, and consistently live and breathe that in how they engage with different employees through the diversity agenda, and actually you feel it in their culture.
Yeah, absolutely. And talk about it more and kind of share the success stories.
And the acid test is that somebody like you could go into any one of those clients' areas, speak to whether it's one of our workers or one of the clients, and they are able to articulate a sense of feeling of, I feel included, I feel a sense of belonging, and actually I feel that I fit in here and I matter. And that's the acid test for me.
No, absolutely. What are the key takeaways that you'd like people to go away and kind of put into their own culture and workplaces? My
biggest takeaway is be really conscious of the communities that you are an employer of, and create a local D&I strategy that ensures that your business is reflective of the communities that they serve. That's my biggest takeaway.
Yeah, fantastic, fantastic. Well, thank you very much for coming in to talk to us today.
It's been a real pleasure. Thank you, Sam.
No, it's been really interesting for me, so thank you very much.
Thank you.